Loud and limited production vehicles that are over-engineered beyond what anybody needs, it's not just about sports cars. It's also pickup trucks, like the Chevy Colorado ZR2 Bison. It's new for 2024, and it is the most extreme midsize truck in the entire segment. Not just with the size of these giant tires, not just the color, but the capability. So we gotta go drive. This Colorado was new for the 2023 model year, but the Bison is brand new for 2024. It substantially upgrades an already substantially upgraded truck, the ZR2, and it takes it to an even higher level. There's several stages of suspension lift with a Colorado. There's the main truck, which is about 7.9 inches. There's the Z71, there's the Trail Boss, there's the ZR2, and on top of all of that, at 12.2 inches, is the ZR2 Bison. Because of the size of these tires, they're 35 inches tall. It's about 1.5 inches taller than the regular ZR2, which is already plenty taller than the Trail Boss. So this one's standing over 80 inches tall in total, but it's not as big of a truck as you'd expect. Every model comes as a 4-door crew cab with only a 5-foot 2-inch bed, so it's not all that big. Here's why all that clearance really matters. Departure, breakover, approach, significantly improved over the ZR2. 38.2 degrees in the front, and it's not all because of these 35-inch mud terrains. You're getting special AEV bumpers all around. They are hardened steel. AEV stands for American Expedition Vehicles. They're a respected outfitter in the aftermarket, and they're specially designed for this truck to improve those angles. Especially in the front, there's integrated tow hooks, and you can also add an aftermarket winch if you so desire. There's also special fender flares. Those are plastic, but because the truck is a bit wider, it has to contain these gigantic tires. And if you're looking underneath the truck, you're gonna find more AEV skid plates, including ones made out of extra strength boron steel protecting the rear diff and the fuel tank. This is a very serious upgrade. The Bison has the same steel rock rails and the same suspension travel, very generous, almost 10 inches in the front and nearly a foot in the rear. But the dampers have been retuned. These are Multimatic dynamic spool valve dampers. You can check out my review of the Silverado ZR2 to really see how those work. But in essence, what they're doing is not only providing a really well-controlled ride off the road, they've got a special thing called jounce control, which really amount to hydraulic bump stops. In most trucks, you don't have anything hydraulic there. It's typically just a rubber bushing to prevent the suspension from bottoming out into the frame. Here, it acts like an additional compression stroke, so when you're really hammering it off-road, well, you're gonna come back down a lot softer. When you park a Bison like this, all these pretty gold bits are right in everyone's view. That's the damper, and that's that hydraulic bump stop called the jounce control. But what you also see here is that these dampers are mounted outboard the frame rails instead of inboard. The previous generation ZR2 had them inboard, and it actually inhibited ground clearance because these parts were going into near the solid axle. But now, even though there is a solid axle and it's not independent, and this leaf spring is hanging kind of low, they're all out of the way. And it also rides pretty well. In the bed, there's 8 standard tie-down hooks, there's a spray-in bed liner, this special storage in the tailgate, and that. It's another 35-inch tire that completely blocks the rear view mirror, just giving you about this much window. So when you're actually on the highway or driving anywhere, you cannot see. Now, Chevy moved it to this top position because they said they wanted to give more bed space. But truly, I don't think that's a good idea. A big truck needs big cylinders, and on the Colorado, there's just 4. A turbocharged 4 that produces numbers like these. From 2.7 liters, that's a very big displacement for a 4, but up to 430 pound-feet of torque just on regular grade gas. You don't need premium. And there's an 8-speed automatic transmission that shifts pretty quickly. I'll show you how that works. And on the ZR2 Bison, you get front and rear locking differentials as standard. Fuel economy is appropriately terrible. 16 mpg across the board. It's the worst among all Colorados, as are the towing and the payload numbers. Because with this truck, those are not the priority. Jumping over rocks is. The ZR2 has a basic interior, but it is dressed up versus regular Colorados. For example, right here, they're padded, so your knees do not knock against hard plastic. Pretty critical when you're banging around off-road. The bed part of any Colorado, there's no physical headlight switches, nothing. And there's no grab handle for the driver, so you cannot get in this truck without grabbing the steering wheel. But the great thing, the screens, the toggle switches, the physical climate controls, and even switches behind the steering wheel so you can change and seek radio stations. The ZR2 brings yellow stitching on the seats, doors, and the dash. There's also a camouflage textured trim on this dash. If you get the Bison, you get AEV logos on the headrest and special rubber mats. The materials aren't all that great because it is a truck and every truck in this class is dressed the exact same way. But for the money you're spending, it shouldn't have to be that way. At Porsche, they'll charge you $600 for a colored seatbelt. At Chevy, it's $50. Money well spent. It's very cramped in the back of the Colorado. As you'd expect, a midsize truck truly feels compact. And if you thought there'd be extra space under the seats like in most pickups, this blocks everything. The Colorado's 11.3-inch touchscreen, it's quick, it's clear, it runs Google natively, so you got Maps, you get Assistant. It's also got Android Auto and CarPlay, they're wireless. But the cool features on the ZR2 are these off-road modes. You can see everything from pitch and degrees to how high we are right now, over 500 feet in Massachusetts. Yes, that's pretty high. And from any screen here, you can activate the cameras, plenty of views, and off-road, I just love this system. I absolutely love all the views. Underneath the truck, I can see the axles from both ends. Amazing, truly amazing. Other interesting ZR2 features, there's an air down mode for the tires. This is the opposite of a regular tire fill alert, so when you actually go down, and if I want to select it down here, say if I want to go really deep sand, well, it'll honk the horn after I've let air out of the tires, and then when you put them back to the factory tire pressures, it beeps again, so really useful and convenient. One gripe, and it's a big one, GM has moved a lot of the physical controls for windows and lights here. It might not seem like a big deal, but this was so much easier before when there were just simple switches. There's 7 different layouts for the gauge cluster. I like that. Simple button on the steering wheel changes each one, and if you want to change what's in the center between those 2 gauges, you can do it on the touch screen. Full screen maps with navigation, love that. That's a fun one. Off-road mode, that's great. It duplicates what's in the app right in front of you. And if you hold down the button, you get 3 more styles for the gauge faces. I'll put it on 3 and they become kind of square, like a Cartier watch. Maybe that's overshooting it. But there's a lot of ways to look at things here, I like it. This yellow seatbelt, this is putting me in a really good mood. The benefit of having 4 very large cylinders is that this acts just like a big old V6. It certainly gets the fuel economy of a larger engine, which is to say it's quite bad. I've been getting about 15, no matter if I'm on the highway or driving around town. But it's a really good engine. Now I've reviewed this same engine in the Chevy Silverado 1500, a much larger pickup truck. Watch that review. Look how big that truck is. If that engine can handle that truck, well, it works so much better in the Colorado. Now the ZR2, especially with the Bison package, is pushing about 5,200 pounds, so it's not light, but it's definitely lighter than what you'll find in the light duty segment. Even without shifter paddles, without a sport mode, this 8-speed automatic is very responsive. And it holds the gears very close, not entirely to redline. Then it settles right down again. It's good. If I'm gonna knock this powertrain, I'd say that the transmission at times keeps it in a really high gear and that any little throttle position has to downshift. But it does happen so quickly that you don't mind it. But that's one of the issues of just having this type of smaller engine, even though it's big. It's big for a 4-cylinder. It's still a 4-cylinder engine with a turbo. Even though there's a lot of torque, it still needs to downshift. But luckily, the transmission programming is very good. To be honest, I would have expected this truck to be a lot noisier. We're riding on 35s. These are mud terrains. We're lifted. There's nothing aerodynamic about this truck, not anymore. The regular Colorado certainly is. It has its moments. It's more of a street truck. This one rides so well on the highway. The only issue that you can't see who's behind you, ever. So changing lanes is definitely a bit of a hassle. It's stressful, to be honest. If I owned this truck, I would get rid of that back tire. And to be honest, I think Chevy should offer a delete option, a no-cost option to get rid of that tire and at least put it back where the old ZR2 was, where it was flatter on the bed. On back roads, this is the type of truck that you'd want, because even though it's wider, it doesn't feel like it. This is the truck that's right size for a normal road, so it looks outrageous to everyone else on the outside, but really it doesn't take up any more space than your average SUV in the midsize class. Still, it takes a little bit of course correction to bring this Bison in a straight line, because it wants to wobble. It's got a softer ride, and the steering just isn't quite as accurate because it's meant for severe off-road duty. But once you get accustomed to the slower motions of this chassis and take it easier, you'll find that it really isn't that intimidating. I don't feel bad at all driving this truck. I don't. What's also great is that whenever you're on a terrible road like I'm driving on right now, you don't have to care. These tires soak up anything. And if there's holes, they'll drive over them. That's how large these tires are. It's just incredible, truly. I forget that I can do things in this truck that I'd be swerving out of the way to avoid potholes in a normal SUV. So the difference with the ZR2 Bison versus the regular ZR2 is that it has what's called jounce control. That's not something that's activated now at these low speeds when I'm not jumping over anything. It's when you're coming back down from a landing, presumably, and it's an extra bit of compression that it adds at the end as opposed to the springs just slamming into the chassis. So that's good that it has that. And the regular ZR2 does not. But when you're not using those special jounce controls, well, it rides fantastically, as you'd expect it to. And that's what's so great about a truck like this, because it soaks up everything, absolutely everything. It's like being on a mountain of pillows with these tires. Couldn't be any easier. What's great about the Bison in these off-road modes is that the cameras stay on, even at higher speeds, where they'd ordinarily turn off. And this truck just kicks it. And I'm just screwing around now because got it in two-wheel drive mode, but there's still tons of traction. And I just can't get over the ride. It feels great. Even that, it looks worse than it feels. When you're in this truck, you definitely get the confidence that you can be driving a lot quicker. Not that you want to break this thing, but there's so much suspension travel, almost a foot in the rear and almost 10 inches in the front. Nice thing about 4Low is that it automatically disables the safety systems like the forward collision alert and the emergency braking, all things that you don't want happening when you're off-road. In some other trucks, you've got to disable those systems separately. And what I love most are having cameras that stay on all the time, so I can see my approach before I even get there. Love that. It's like having a spotter on the truck. Go on this side here, make it a little smoother. And it's just fun. You see the water just coming off the frame. It's cool. When you're off-roading by yourself, casually, the technology on this Bison, I think, just makes it more approachable, more manageable. I like that. I really do. There's just so much grunt from this four-cylinder that I forget it's a four-cylinder. Definitely a lot of diesel-like torque coming on. And the diesel's no longer available on the Colorado. Quite frankly, I don't think you really miss it, not with all this power. Maybe the fuel efficiency, but for the fun that this truck is designed to give you, nah, you don't need it. All the different driving modes vary how much slip is allowed in each of the modes. For example, in Baja, it's going to allow a lot more slip because it's designed for sand. When you're in the terrain mode, it's using the stability control, so that can inhibit you if you're on that loose dirt type of situation. So it's nice that all these are adjustable. It tells you what it does. And it really does what it says it will. I'm just in the off-road mode right now. So the stability control is disabled, but there's still some traction control, partially deactivated. And the great thing here is that unlike some other heavy-duty trucks that we have put through this same course, there are some very hefty metal skid plates. Should anything go wrong, there's a lot of metal on this truck. It's not plastic. Honestly, what I'm driving today on these roads is just, it's like a breakfast at a French cafe for the Chevy Bison. It's relaxed. You could be smoking a cigarette and doing this. The 2024 Chevy Colorado starts at $29,500. There's 5 trims, and this one is the most expensive because of course it is. $64,480 with destination. The Bison package alone adds 12 grand, but you do get 1 oil change. That's standard on every new Chevy. Competitors, there's only 3. The GMC Canyon AT4X AEV, an exact replica of the Chevy, the Ford Ranger Raptor, and the new Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. The ZR2 package makes the most sense in Chevy's smallest pickup, because not only are you getting a better price, you're getting all of the off-road features and technology in a much better package. It's so much easier to drive this vehicle than bigger trucks. And among the midsize segment, no, it is not the fastest, it's not the best sounding, and the interior, definitely not the nicest by far. But everything else really is spot on. What do you think? And if you want more truck reviews, go to CarGurus.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.